Chapter 10, Sun Tzu's The Art of War, also translated as ground, situational positioning, or geography in warfare. Sun Tzu explains how the nature of the terrain determines success or failure in battle. He categorizes different types of ground, how each affects strategy, and how a wise general should adapt to the landscape. The chapter also discusses how the enemy's behavior changes depending on terrain, and how to use deception and positioning to gain the advantage. The key lesson of this chapter is, victory is decided before battle by choosing favorable ground and forcing the enemy into a disadvantageous position. 1. The 6 types of terrain and how to use them. Sun Tzu classifies the battlefield into 6 types of terrain, each requiring different tactics. Description: best strategy, dangers to avoid. Accessible terrain: open land where both armies can move easily. Seize high ground first and wait for the enemy to attack. Do not engage without an advantage. Entrapping terrain: narrow passes, valleys, forests. Block exits, set ambushes. If caught inside, escape quickly. Indecisive terrain: land that gives no side a clear advantage. Avoid fighting here. If forced to fight, use deception. Restricted terrain: difficult to pass, mountains, swamps. Hold defensive positions, slow down the enemy, do not let the enemy trap you. Precipitous terrain: cliffs, rivers, deep valleys. Occupy first and defend. If arriving second, avoid engagement. Distant terrain: land far from reinforcements. Avoid battle unless forced. If fighting, conserve supplies. Example: Battle of Thermopylae, 480 BCE, Greece versus Persia. The Greeks used entrapping terrain, narrow pass, to nullify the Persian numbers. The Persians suffered heavy losses until they found a secret path to outflank the Greeks. Now 2. The 9 strategic positions of an army. Sun Tzu identifies 9 different battlefield positions and how a general should act in each case. Meaning: best strategy. Troops are near home and may flee if morale is low. Do not engage in battle. Keep troops united. Both armies are near their own territories. Avoid unnecessary fighting. Strengthen defenses. Contentious ground: terrain gives a major advantage to whoever holds it. Secure the ground first, force enemy to fight elsewhere. Open ground: neutral land with no clear advantage. Do not attack unless enemy is weak. Land valuable to multiple states: form alliances or secure control before the enemy does. Serious ground: moving deeper into enemy territory. Ensure strong supply lines and maintain morale. Difficult ground: mountains, swamps, or harsh landscapes. Avoid if possible. Use only if necessary for ambushes. Surrounded ground: the army is in a trapped position. Seek escape or use deception to break through. Desperate ground: no escape, only victory or death. Motivate troops to fight with all their strength. Example: Napoleon's Russian campaign, 1812. He pushed too deep into serious ground without secure supply lines. Russian forces used difficult ground, snow, forests, to exhaust Napoleon's army. The French became trapped on surrounded ground during the retreat, leading to disaster. Sun 3. How terrain affects enemy behavior. Sun Tzu explains how analyzing the enemy's movement can reveal their intentions. What it means. Best response: if the enemy advances aggressively, they are confident or hiding a weakness. Use deception or draw them into bad terrain. If they camp on high ground, they are seeking defense. Do not attack directly. Wait for them to descend. If they abandon good positions, they are planning a trick or luring you in. Do not chase without scouting first. If they leave their camp suddenly, they are afraid or planning an ambush. Investigate before pursuing. Example: Battle of Cannae, 216 BCE, Hannibal versus Rome. Hannibal's troops retreated in the center, luring the Romans in. Once the Romans entered bad terrain, Hannibal's forces surrounded them and destroyed them. How to control the battlefield with positioning. Sun Tzu emphasizes that good positioning forces the enemy into weak situations. 4.1. Controlling key locations. Hold higher ground. It is easier to defend and provides better visibility. Block enemy supply routes. This weakens them without direct fighting. Force the enemy into narrow terrain. This limits their movement and numbers. 4.2. Avoiding bad positions. Do not fight uphill against an entrenched enemy. This is almost always a losing battle. Avoid fighting near rivers unless you control the crossings. Water limits movement. Do not let the enemy choose the battlefield, dictate the location of the fight. Example, the Battle of Gettysburg, 1863, American Civil War. The Union Army held the high ground, forcing the Confederates to attack uphill. This positioning led to a decisive Union victory. 5. The 3 strategies for using terrain to win. 5.1. Use deception to force the enemy into bad terrain. Pretend to retreat. The enemy will chase and enter bad ground. Use false trails. Lead the enemy into swamps or mountains. Example, Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975. Viet Cong fighters used tunnels and jungle terrain to lure American forces into difficult battles. 5.2. Secure natural defenses first. Fortify mountains, bridges, and riverbanks before the enemy arrives. Use terrain to divide a larger enemy force. Example, the Battle of Hastings, 1066. The Norman cavalry could not break the English shield wall on high ground. Only when the English were tricked into leaving the high ground did the Normans win. 5.3. Manipulate morale through terrain. Fight on home ground whenever possible. Troops fight harder when defending their own land. Trap the enemy in difficult ground. It lowers their morale and energy. Example, the Battle of the Alamo, 1836, Texas Revolution. Texans used the fort's walls as defense against a larger Mexican force. Despite being outnumbered, they held off the enemy for days. 6. Key takeaways from Chapter 10. 1. Terrain determines the course of war. Understanding landscapes is as important as understanding tactics. 2. Positioning is more important than strength. A well-placed army can defeat a larger one. 3. The enemy's movement reveals their plans. Analyze their positioning and act accordingly. Control key locations before battle. Bridges, hills, forests, and roads determine victory. 5. Use deception to force the enemy into bad positions. A trapped enemy is easier to destroy. Conclusion. Chapter 10, Terrain, teaches that war is won through positioning and controlling the battlefield before the fight begins. A wise general understands how landscapes shape strategy, anticipates the enemy's moves, and uses terrain to dictate the terms of engagement. In war, those who control the ground control the outcome.